Yeah. All right. I do apologize. I think I am about 5 minutes late, So, but anyway, welcome again to Real Morse Talk, where we're here to talk about real issues that deal with Moors. But our segments that we're starting off with is about our holy and divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali. And we'll be doing several segments on Noble Drew Ali. And then, of course, we'll move on to other subjects. I am your host today. I am Prime Minister, National Grand Sheikh Bay. My role is I am Prime Minister of the Moorish Nation, Moorish Science of America, Divine and National Movement. And in some documentation that I've been going through historical research, you'll see that it has my information listed there, my uncle's information listed there. So Moors are gathering information, which I love that part. They're gathering information to have historically. Some of the reasons why we have Real Moors Talk is because right now, the individual that's in the White House is eliminating all Asiatic history, all melanated people's history historically is being eliminated. And that's being eliminated on purpose. And so just think about it. We already Moors are not talked about. We are already erased from history and eliminated. So now think about elimination of us to the fact where our history has already been eliminated, is already being distorted, and now the information that's more that we've gathered for ourselves is eliminated too. And then years from now, we have one of our children, let's say generations from now, to one day go down into the basement and see information about Moors, but never had the information, never had the opportunity to historically learn who they were. And we don't want that to happen here. And so the bottom line is, I apologize, I was taking gum out of my mouth. I meant to do it before the segment started. The bottom line is that we as Moors do not want that to happen to us ever again. And so I'm giving information about more science that you can literally look up the information that I'm giving you is historical documentation. Of course, some things are oral tradition that is told through us by oral, tradition, which some things were not recorded back then. A lot of us did not know how to read or to write. And so a lot of that history was orally told. And then other Moors pass it down. And of course, we know when things are oral, sometimes it gets the transcription of it, when someone's just transcribing something may get lost in the trying to get it across, trying to tell us exactly what it's all about. So sometimes we have to figure out things for ourselves. So again, this is real more talk. And so what I did the week prior, that was Thursday of the prior week, I have to correct a couple of things that I did say in the broadcast because it's live. And then when I went back to listen to it myself, I realized I was saying things before Noble Drew Ali, and that would be after Prophet Noble Drew Ali, not before. So some of you all probably listened to that and said, oh, well, she didn't get that quite correct. And it was before some of the information that I was talking about was people that were said before Noble Drew Ali, and that wasn't correct. It would have been coming after Prophet Noble Drew Ali. So I just wanted to make sure that that part was corrected. And when you listen to the first broadcast, it was our soft opening, you will see that. All right. So what I did this time is I made notes for myself to go over with you all. I wanted to be very clear and try to stay on topic since we only have 2 hours to do this. I don't want to bore you all or you all get tired from listening to what I'm saying or get bored. So I wanted to try to keep the format moving on. And then, of course, as questions are posed, some of you all may have questions that you want to ask. And, I don't duck any questions. So if I'm able to answer them, or should I say when I am able to answer them, I will answer them. So most of my information out of some of the oral things that I was told as a child, some of the things are most of them are from historical documentation that you can actually look up the information for yourselves. All right, so this is our second segment of Real Morse Talk. And at Real Morse Talk, I want to welcome you all here. And I already introduced myself. And I want you to know tonight we're going to continue to discuss the life and legacy of Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the man, the myth, the legend, who I so adore and love so much. The man who proceeded to restore identity back to a people who have been mislabeled and misclassified. And of course, that would be us, the Moors. Mislabeled, misclassified, that is us. Strangers in our own land, yes, that is us. Okay, so here on Real Morse Talk, we want to talk about those things because it's very, very important to me that I make sure that when I'm talking about information that you all get exactly what I'm speaking of. My apologize, my glasses fell on the floor, so I want to grab my glasses real quickly because as I'm reading today, I'm going to be using this set of eyes to make sure that I'm reading some of the information, but I don't want to read all of this text and bore you with it. I just want to make sure that some of my historical timeline is correct because I know I would advise everyone to take out a pencil and some paper and take some notes because I think note taking is essential when we're talking about historical information because I know a lot of you all want to look the information up for yourselves. And so since that is the case, I would like to give you all that opportunity to do that. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and start the information and I'm going to go in topics and try to stay on track of what I'm speaking of. And so I'm going to go ahead and just put my other pair of eyes on. I love these glasses on my other pair of eyes. And so the first thing we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to talk about how it all began, the restoration of nationality, the meaning of birthrights, the phrase strangers in our own land, why historical truth remains controversial, and why research must always come before opinion. And that's important to me because, you know, these days you hear so many people say, well, that's my truth. That's my truth. Truth is one. There is no your truth, my truth, his truth, her truth. There is no such thing. What people have taken is the word opinion and replaced it with truth. So if I have an opinion about something, saying my opinion is, I'm saying my truth is. And that's absolutely incorrect. But to make sure this truth stays distorted, colonial occupiers make sure that they confuse the language. So that way now, when I'm saying to you something that this is the truth, you're thinking, oh, that's just prime minister's truth. That may not be the real truth, you know, instead of saying the opinion of. So just remember that the next time someone says to you, this is my truth, there's no such thing. It either is truth or falsehood. And let me give you an example. I could go into, let's say, friend's rose garden, and I could pull their roses off of their branch because I love roses, especially my favorite color roses are yellow roses, yellow and white roses. So I could pick those roses off, right? And I could pick those off. And then I could say, they said, did you pick my roses off? Did you pick roses off my rose bush? And instead of being factually correct and say, yes, I did, I should have maybe asked first. I could easily say, well, according to my truth, is I didn't really pick the roses off of your rose garden, knowing dag well that I picked those roses off of there. And so that's how messed up that whole word is your truth or my truth is. There's no such thing. It's either the truth or it's falsehood. There's no in between, but we do have opinions and we are entitled to our opinions. And that is why we have to stop saying your truth or my truth. It's either my opinion of the matter is or your opinion of the matter is. Now, this information that I'm giving you historically is not an opinion, it's actual documented fact through oral tradition. People have talked about it through documentation that you can look it up. That is what Real Morris Talk is all about. All right. And so I really feel as though in order to know more science truly, you have to know the man behind the legacy. You have to know the intention of what he was trying to do. And so I'm going to take you through a historical timeline today and go through history. And we're going to, I am going to talk about those things and then you can write them down. And if you have a thought about them, you can certainly post a thought in the chat. But listen, this is not a debate because some people like to get on and what they call trolling, troll you, say negative things about you, negative things to you. I'm not here trying to do any of that. My whole goal is because I truly believe that Prophet Noble Drew Ali is not talked about. He is not really investigated. He's not really given to the people. And so people really do not know the man on the information that he had. And listen, he was taken from us in a very short time frame at the age of 43. He was his life was wiped away from us. So we didn't get to have him longer than that. However, we did have predecessors, people who came after him. Right, there was people that came after him that we were able to continue on the movement with. And one of the ones was, for me, was Prophet Noble Drew reincarnated, for me, with my family legacy. And I truly loved everything that he did, and we'll talk about that at Top Line. And listen, you may not agree with me, you may not say he wasn't this, he wasn't that. That's your opinion. No proof of the truth. But what I am, these are historical records that are created, that are put there, that you can look at them, and whether you agree or disagree, I'm giving you the legacy, the information for you to make informed decisions for yourself. It is truly about the prophet, the legacy of more science. And listen, we have a lot of other things to talk about in more science. We have a lot of things that Real More Talk talks about. But I really wanted to make our interest into the audience about more science and the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and what his intentions were as historically put together. Now, I can tell you what my opinion is of what I think that Prophet Noble Drew Ali was trying to do, but I'm going to give you historical information about what he did and the things that he tried to do for us as a people. And then I may state in an opinion for myself, because I love the work that Prophet Noble Drew Ali did for us. Now, do I agree with every single thing? Absolutely, 100%. No one agrees with every single thing 100%. No one does. But what he did to restore the birthrights to the people called Negro, Black, and Color today that are Moors, I agree with. And a lot of Moors, want to fight with the prophet about information, not with him physically because his form is not here, but historically, and try to make him out to be an individual that was not healthy or worthy of us. But the bottom line is they're still carrying their Ilbays and Alis. They're still biting off his information and using it to set up their own organizations. They're doing that. And so Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the legacy, the myth, the man that no one wants to talk about. And a lot of this content I'm taking from the book that I'm creating about Noble Drew Ali. My book is entitled The Man That No One Wants to Talk About, Noble Drew Ali. And if some of you all are interested to pre-order the book, I can put the link in the chat for you for pre-ordering the book. But I thought it was really important, legacy-wise, for our children to be able to have the beginning. See, we don't want to cover all of Noble Drew Ali's life because we don't want to face it. And it seems like we always running from the truth. But we have to face everything about our prophet, everything that he did, what he did for us, and he died for us. He died to uplift fallen humanity. He died to make sure that we never have to feel the sting of Negro, Black, and Colored again. That is what the man did. And so we have to honor. And I say, oh, you all talk about the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. You talk about Noble Drew Ali, talk about Noble Drew Ali. Yes, we do. We talk about Noble Drew Ali because he needs to be talked about. He needs to be recognized. That is a true fact. He needs to be recognized. And listen, I always say in a conversation that no one complains about how much honor Prophet Muhammad's given. Right, the Muslims who migrated into our territories and took on Islam, they give peace and blessings be upon him. Everything, peace and blessings be upon him. They make sure they honor the man that came here to make sure that they could live a peaceful life, because that's what Islam means. And so, therefore, people want to complain all day long, but I don't hear complaints about that. When people say that, I don't hear anyone complain. Only complaints come from when we're talking about our holy and divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Then people want to start complaining about that. And so I'm going to make sure that all your complaints, it's fine if you want to complain. I'm just going to scoot back a little bit if you want to complain. But the bottom line is that he is who he is. and we are who we are because of him today. All right, so I'm going to get into it. Like I said, I made notes for myself this time because the last time, when the last time I did not make notes for myself, and so I don't want to make errors. I apologize. I want to just move. This is live stream, so last time it was like you were like a robot. You stayed in front of the screen the whole time, and so I'll make sure that I drink water and pause and things like that. But let's get into it. So, all right. So how it all began. So we're going to talk about the restoration of nationality today, the meaning of birthrights, the phrase strangers in their own land, why historical truth remains controversial, and why research must always come before opinion. And I think I did go over that part before. All right. And so let's according to temple literature, elder Moore's information, things that I was taught, and historical information, the information on Prophet Noble Drew Ali. So we know that Prophet Noble Drew Ali was born on January the 8th, 1886. That's historical fact. Now, some people say that he was born under a different name and they found another name that he was born under. I think it's Thomas something. And, but Prophet Noble Drew Ali never told us that. They say that this particular individual that they had has the same birth date of the prophet, lived in the same city of the prophet, etc. That's what they say about that. But let me take you to a little bit of history that I have and some of the information that's in my book. So my book is, again, about Prophet Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish Science Temple, and it covers everything from Prophet Noble Drew Ali. It covers everything from the 1700s, before Prophet Noble Drew Ali came on the scene, all the way up to present day. So it's wonderful reading material. Okay, so we're going to get into it. So born Timothy Drew on January 8, 1886, he worked as a train expressman and pullman porter, right? He worked, he also was raised according to legacy in a Baptist household. Now we know that most of us, before Islam came back to our consciousness, were raised Christians. Most of us, and some of us were very fortunate not to be raised as Christians, but some of us, were. And so during that era of time, according to history or legacy, Prophet Noble Drew Ali was actually born in a household where his family practiced the so-called Christianity faith as Baptists. They have different denominations. Okay. And so also, it says that his father, historically, they're saying belonged to the Morris Zion Baptist Church, according to some information in history. And we'll get more into that as well. All right. So he attempted to form. And so so when he first came, he moved to Newark in 1907. Some of us think that he only came in 1912 and they set up the movement in 1913, but he actually came to Newark, New Jersey in 1907 is when he did come. All right. And when he came to 1907, he met a lot of different people, realizing he had something was wrong. He knew that, Christianity was not for him. He knew something was wrong. He knew the people were not being told the truth. And so this started him on a journey. So now you have your historical information to say that when he first came here into 1907, that he worked at, in a circus. As a circus, he traveled with a band of, people that they call, tribes of Indians and, the Cherokees and things like that. There's a lot of different history behind what they thought happened from 1907 to 1912. All right. So I'm going to give you, so I know he attempted to form a group known as the Drew Baptist Movement. So before even him doing the Old Canaanite Temple, Noble Drew Ali tried to start a movement ahead of time, but something just wasn't quite right with that, with the whole Baptist movement thing, right? He also was associated with the Prince Hall Masons and the ancient Egyptian Arabic order Mystic Shrine. So a lot of people say, Prophet Noble Drew Ali was, this is Masonic order that we're doing, etc. So a lot of your great leaders all came through different Masonic information, Masonic orders. So he met people in these different organizations affiliate with people in these different organizations. Because when you are one seeking knowledge, you have to be able to go to different entities to get the knowledge that you need, especially when you feel deep inside something is wrong, when you feel like you have a job to do, a work to do, and you feel like I need to collect research, because no one's born with the knowledge that they have. Some of people want us to believe that they just woke up in epiphany and they was born with the knowledge that they have. That is not true. You have to seek the knowledge. Seek ye first. You have to seek the knowledge and then be able to pass it on to others. All right. By 2000, so by 1912, Prophet Noble Drew Ali decided to open up the old Canaanite temple. And I talked about that in a prior meeting, that when he realized the Canaanite temple was not the right fit, and he did meet with different people. According to legacy, he met with Deuce Muhammad, who we know was definitely from, the other side of Africa, where they claim that they brought us from, which we know is a false. But Deuce Muhammad and, affiliates of Deuce Muhammad, he met with different people, and I'm going to go into some of the names of the people that he met with and associated with. All right. So by 1916, 1913, he opened the old Canaanite temple, which is established in New York. And so after 1913, the old Canaanite temple was not the right fit for what Prophet Noble Drew Ali was trying to do, was bring back national order of nationality and birthrights. So because he was in different organizations prior to that, he felt like the Canaanite temple would be something that we would associate with. And that didn't be the case. We know old Canaanite temple was still more like a religious organization, more like a church type atmosphere. It was not quite what Prophet Noble Drew Ali had in the mind for us, in our mindset. So 1916 disputes led to formation of the Moorish Divine and National Movement. So what happened is, when the Prophet Noble Drew Ali realized the old Canaanite temple was not the fit, he changed it to the Moorish Temple of Science. And we went into that the prior week too, in the Moorish Temple of Science, and then it was changed. And I'm going to go into some of that too, and when it was changed. But that is what he decided to do with the Moorish Temple of Science, because he realized that, we're Moors. So Moors are not really going to associate with Canaanites. You have to try to make that connection. And so this is what a journey that he was on after, I'm sure he talked to others. Listen, I was not there, but I'm sure it sounds like his decision making. He talked to others that, had information and realized that that wasn't the right fit. So he decided to make sure he changed it, which when you know better, you do better. When you know better, you act better. So he was like, Moorish Temple of Science. So the Moorish Temple of Science, filed art. So the Moorish Temple of Science, filed articles of incorporation. And this is civic history. This is information that you can actually find. Okay. You can find these in the records. Okay. And so before, we continue with that, I want to give a brief documentation referred to the discussion about Noble Drew Ali. So on references, the Ahmadiyya, and this is how I'm pronouncing it, the Ahmadiyya movement mentions a figure identified as Maulvi Mubarak Ali. And the document states that that was Prophet Noble Drew Ali, another organization that he may have been familiarized with before he started the Moorish Temple of Science, or Moorish Science Temple. And, and that suggestions that appear that is him, but there's no real historical documentation that was Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And the picture that they show could not be him, but I don't count out any historical records that, someone presents forward, because it could have been him with another organization. But I wanted to make sure that I covered that, because someone asked me about that. Well, wasn't he in another group, before then? Okay. And so it also explains me, the Timothy Drew. Now, me, for all those who do know me, I don't condone any European colonized names at all. We try to find ways to hold on to those names and make excuses to hold on to those names. But I'm going to break down what it says on the records. It says that Timotheus, which that's what Timothy is supposed to mean, Greek, honoring God, Drew, which means wise, and Ali meaning high or elevated. All right, and so that signifies that Prophet Noble Drew Ali was honoring God, who is wise, high, and elevated. Information about him. Now, let me be perfectly clear that suggests that is who he was at that time. But independently verification documentation for me, I have no proof that is Prophet Noble Drew Ali, but others may have proof that it is. And if you have the proof that is Noble Drew Ali in those records, I mean real proof, then bring it on so I can make the correction. But I'm just saying that historically you can look that up and you will find that it's saying that Prophet Noble Drew Ali had an organization. It was a organization that was dedicated to more Egyptian types learning, and that's the name that he took on at that particular time. All right. Okay, so there's no truth that the Moorish Science Temple of America was even related to that organization as well. But listen, I do not dismiss any internal documents. If I have documentation, I have so much information on Prophet Noble Drew Ali. In order to write a book, I had to go into my archives, pull out all of my information that I've collected over the years, put it all together. Some of my associates have some of my information that I gave them years ago when I first started wanting to write this booklet. And so much information about Prophet Noble Drew Ali. So I just wanted to put that out there. All right. So that is what I wanted to talk about. So a lot of people say that he was in all these different organizations and his family was in the Zion. It was the Hebrew Moorish Zion Baptist Church. There were several different organizations that started in the 1700s, then some after Prophet Noble Drew Ali. There's no historical proof that any of these temples or churches that called themselves this taught more science. Is no proof that they came and taught us who we were and brought us back our identity and birthright. So it's simply historically, you can find them that they were open. You saw the brothers in fezzes, the sisters in turbans, which is beautiful. But I have not seen any historical information that leads me to believe that they were teaching more science before Prophet Noble Drew Ali came to the scene. All right. So to understand this a little bit better, I want to go through the early Moorish and Hebrew movements timeline. So I want to walk with me, and please, historically, if you have an email, you can send you or information that you're requesting from me. You can literally send it to realmoorstalk@yahoo.com. And I can send you like my timeline information, things like that, or you can just wait for my book to come out. But I just want people to be aware of the timeline that I'm speaking of today. So the timeline, is 1700, strangers in their own land. All right, where we were preserving spiritual tradition, Islamic literacy existing among some West African, North African Moors. Now, remember that at one time, all this land mass was Asia. I just want to go back in the mind so we could stay with me. All this land mass was Asia at one time. And we spoke about before the earthquake caused the division, it caused the Great Pangea. You can look that up. Caused the division and the earth to shatter a piece like puzzle, because if you try to push the earth back together, it'll fit like a puzzle. So it broke everything up to different landmass and water. Of course, when the land broke through, the water that we're sitting on, of course, the lands dispersed, right? And all of the water was surrounding different lands. So we got the breakup. So now, before Africa is even in existence ever, we were Asiatic. We were the origin of Asiatic. And that means the original land that was before any other landmass on earth. That is who we are, the original. So now we're talking about the timeline coming from, because our history does not start with the so-called slavery and being strangers in our own land in the 1700s is where a lot of emerging thoughts came about that we need to get back to who we were. And so we have the Islamic literacy existed. In the 1800s, independent melanated churches formed the AME Zion. In the 1890s, the Moorish Zionist temple references appeared in Brooklyn, New York. In the early 1900s, Harlem becomes a center of religious experimentation. The 1913, the Old Canaan Temple was established. 1921, the Moorish Zionist Temple in Harlem under Rabbi Mordecai Herman. So I'm saying that more DCI or Mordecai Herman. In the 1920, Arnold Josiah Ford was active in Hebrew congregations. In 1925 to 1928, the Moorish Zionist Temple of America expands and moves to Chicago, Illinois. All right. And so, what I want to talk about is I gave you a timeline on the things that happened during that time. And so, I want to clarify some things about the Moorish Temple of Science, which was organized. So, we went from the old Canaanite temple to the Moorish Temple of Science, which was mostly a civic organization. And I spoke about that the prior week. And because a lot of people coming out of Christianity wanted the Islamic portion of, they wanted religion. Let's put it that way. They were thought that religion was missing, so they wanted to incorporate religion into the equation. And so the Moorish Temple of Science was in 1925. This all took place about 1925. By 1926, it was incorporated from the Moorish Temple of Science to the Moorish Science Temple of America, and according to the laws of the Secretary of State of Illinois at that time. And so, with that being said, this was November 26th. It was in November, 1926, when it was legally incorporated. Okay. And so we want to talk about that a little bit, because what does that incorporation mean? A lot of people are saying, oh, the prophet sold us out. He made us a corporation. He did this and that. And this is all of this, information that people are talking about. The prophet that was not his intention. His intention was to make a lawfully organized organization where you could practice in peace. Along with religion, he wanted you to also know the Islamic portion of it, the organization, which is civics, which is about citizenships and rights, having birthrights and citizenship. And under this organization, he was able to establish things like a business, giving more information to build businesses. He was able to find it under a religious corporation where he was able to stay in lawful, where he wasn't having any lawful problems with these colonial occupiers. So he was doing things to make sure that we were protected. And so, and you have to look at the time frame he was in. He was in the 1920s. In the 1920s, in a time where, listen, the Europeans were killing us every time they got, every chance they got, taking away anything that we had, anything that they thought was right, anything they thought that was waking us up as a people, they were trying to destroy that. So the prophet's work was really done to try to protect us. And so let me make clearly understand. So the word incorporation, so what incorporation provided for us was it provided structure, recognition, to be able to identify as Moors. Under that, we were able to process and file our paper nationality proceedings were able to take place under that. Okay. And then in 1928, when he changed it from the Moorish Temple of Science to the Moorish Science Temple of America, now we fell under the Religious Act, where we were protected to practice our religion. All right. So so he changed that. And by 1928, it was national. And the focus of the organization was the program of uplifting for humanity. The whole thing, the prophet wanted to go out to the Moors, and he wanted to he said, listen, you said, come ye all Asians and hear the truth about your nationality and birthrights, because you are not Negroes. That's what we're calling ourselves. Learn of your forefathers' ancient and divine creed. That's what he would tell us. So you're Asiatics. You're not Moors. Don't feel this thing of Negro, black, and colored. You are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, Ethiopian. These names were given to the people that were considered enslaved, right? These were brands that they put on you. It had nothing to do with your nationality identification or your birthright. This is what our prophet did for us. Okay. So it refined a way to get the movement settled and get the movement going to keep it established. And then after 1928, the Moorish Temple of Science was now considered the Moorish Science Temple of America. And so that's where we are with that. It was the Moorish Science Temple of America, which it still is today, lawfully incorporated. That's what we are, lawfully incorporated. Now, to get from underneath a lot of occupiers, the Moorish Science Temple, they tried to make this a cult, try to say that this was a cult, that this, was not a national organization. It was a cult. And a lot of times when they're afraid of something, they call it a cult because the word cult seems like it's a bad thing. But the word cult is not a bad thing itself. It's how it is interpreted as being a bad thing, even though we know we were a national organization with a Arcturian complexion, which means from the darkest olive of us to the lightest olive of us, does not mean any Europeans. It meant people who are melanated, born with melon, that does not have a recessive gene. It was for us to uplift fallen humanity. It was us. We fell so low. And I talked about that the prior program, where women fell so low, because when women fall, if we fall down, it's like your household. Give an example. If the mother in the household just falls to substance abuse or whatever out there, the whole household falls apart because mother is not there to keep order in the house. So because we fell, then the whole nation fell. So the key was to bring the uplifting of fallen humanity back, was us to bring us back into the constitutional fold of government, to bring us back so we would be able to bring our sons back, our daughters back, to be able to raise our families with consciousness, with self-respect and identity. So let's recap a little bit. So I talked about Prophet Noble Drew Ali being born in 1886 in North Carolina. This is where his beginning came, in North Carolina. I talked about the possibility that he traveled with the circus, and according to some literature, he traveled with a circus and he met the brothers that were Alis, and these brothers Alis introduced him to Islam, and then Islam is where he picked up, knowing that it was familiar to him, and moved on. All right, other literature states that, the literature that I have, more factual literature, states that when he came here in 1907, that he was searching. So he started several organizations before he came here, before he literally got to the Old Canaanite Temple. When he got to the Old Canaanite Temple and set that up between 1912 and 1913, by 1917, Prophet Noble Drew Ali realized, and I have to say, meeting with others, because it said that he did lawfully meet with Deuce Muhammad. He met with the Egyptian Arabs. He was taken over to the East, and we'll talk about that, where he literally learned about Islam, learned about who we were truly. And so these are functions that happen, again, when one is seeking knowledge, when one is seeking oneself. Then you have to gather information gathering. And during the time, listen, he had to gather a lot of information, because during the time that we're talking about for Prophet Noble Drew Ali, there was not enough. Like today, we're in this electrified age that he spoke about, with internet and computers, and we have upstanding libraries and things like that, which it was very hard to research information back there in the 1920s. But regardless of that, he did that. And so it established that he may have started several organizations, and those did not work out because they just were not comfortable for him. And so then when he met the brother that eventually told him, you need to go searching for the information that you're seeking for, they say that there's no record showing that Prophet Noble Drew Ali ever left the United States. Well, I don't think that there have to be any historical records showing that he left here to prove whether or not he went to Egypt. I don't think there's any records that we need to confirm from what the prophet told us that happened. I believe his word over colonialism. I believe that they would distort the truth for their own benefit, as they always do. So I know for a fact that if that be the case, that the prophet did travel where he said that he traveled to, and met the individuals that he claimed that he met at that time to help him get to us, because the information didn't just pop off at the top of his head. He had to speak with others to be able to get us on the right path, the right track of who we are. So I just wanted to kind of go over everything that I've talked about so far. All right. So now I'm going to go into where the Moorish Science Temple literally became the framework for us as Moors. And listen, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, there was so many different people who were established with the Prophet. When he called all ye agents of America, come and hear the truth about your nationality and birthrights, because you are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, Ethiopians, coon, shine, jigaboo, yo man, you other etc, whatever they were calling us during that time. Prophet Noble Drew Ali woke the Moors up. So listen, people heard his call and they came and followed. He didn't say, you black man, also known as. He didn't say, you nigger, also known as. He didn't say, African, also known as. He said, come all ye Asiatics of America and hear the truth about your nationality and birthright. That's what he said. So why are we today trying to act like that we have to call people black or African Americans and etc to get them to hear us? Listen, Moors, Asiats, anyone who's listening, just take a good deep listen to what I'm about to say to you right now. There is no one in the year of 2026 that has not heard about the Moor Science Temple, or Moors who have not heard about us, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, or know who we are. There's no one living today that can say that they don't have a family member or a friend or, someone who has been touched by or learned or heard the information about Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And listen, me and my son was talking earlier. If you even know about the Nation of Islam, then you know about who we are and more science. So there's no reason in the world for us to be walking around in a dark room today like we do not know who we are. Now, acceptance is one thing, but acting like you just do not know is another. And ignorance of the law is no excuse. Ignorance of information is no excuse. No one's going to give you a pass for information ignorance. Listen, even in these so-called churches, a lot of them know the truth. There was a brother that had and I don't know since COVID hit if he's still online, but he had a show, and all of his on TV, all of his members were dressed like the members of the Nation of Islam. All of them had on the hijabs and the tunics, all of them dressed in white. All of the sisters had that on, and the brothers were, in dark suits, etc. And he was talking Christianity, but it was Islam, which people say, well, how could that happen? Because all of the perspective he was given was Islamic perspective, but he was calling himself Christians. And I just want to say this. In a lot of the literature, it speaks about Jesus, and I believe I covered this prior. Sometimes you have to revamp that they call him Jesus. And as my son and I was talking about that too, that they try to make him a pacifist, like he was so turn the other cheek. He didn't fight back. All of that, which is a lie. When we talk about the real man that they call Jesus, the real man who they tried to call Jesus, well, we know Jesus was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed figure, had nothing to do with us. That the man that they called Jesus, which was Isa, his true name, until he changed it to Yeshua, listen, he did not stand for foolishness. So when they acting like that, they say, what do they call it? The Judeo Christian religion now? Because so much historical fact shows that the man that they call Jesus, which is a misclassification, but if they're talking about the dark, bushy-haired man that we know that was Isa, and not talking about the blonde-haired, blue-eyed replacement that they tried to indoctrinate us with, then that is the truth about that information, that you would be talking about him. All right. We also want to make sure that we understand that. So the whole church concept thing, when the prophet came and told us about we honor Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and Confucius, he used the word Jesus because people were not familiar with Isa. In the Arabic language, they call him, in the Arabic language, Isa, the ISA, Isa, and they say that means Jesus. But we know that his name was Emmanuel. So again, translation of text. The translation of text, Emmanuel, enlightened one. That is what he was named by his mother. Of course, he later years when he decided that he had reached a certain degree after his father's death, then he changed his name, because we all have the right to change our names. No one can't tell you when you reach another degree that you feel that the name that you have is no longer deserving, that you can elevate your name, that you cannot ever change your name is ridiculous. People say lots of things, but that doesn't make it true. Some people say your mother gave you the name she thought that would make you a successor or whatever. Yes, that's maybe what your mother thought about. But a lot of our mothers were indoctrinated with colonialism. So therefore, they gave colonial names. And that does not associate you with your true heritage. Got to get rid of that name. Got to give it back to them. Does not belong to you. And they want to try to keep you with that name. They do not want you to know who you are. You're not supposed to know who you are. What they put together was putting us in the fact that we were never supposed to wake up. And by the time that we did wake up, if that happened, it would be way too late. So this is where we are with that information. So I just wanted to circle back. So now we're to the point where the Moorish Science Temple was incorporated, and now it went from the Moorish Temple of Science to the Moorish Science Temple of America. So we went from the old Canaanite temple, and we have to say that the prophet first tried to start a Baptist group that did not take off, because the word Baptist is is one of the groups that they give themselves, like they have like different types of Christians with all Christianity, but they entitle themselves to different ones. They different Catholic, Baptist, Methodist, they even have now Holy Sanctified and all these alternatives and all these different things. So it's all Christianity. So Prophet Noble Drew Ali realized that was not the right move, right? When he came here in 1907. But he was trying to establish something for the people. So he went on and decided that he wanted to try something from previous organizations that he had been in, and that would be the Old Canaanite Temple, because of some affiliation that he had before with other organizations, other groups, other people. Maybe even so, I don't want to say maybe, because then that puts some, I want to say his association with the Moorish Zion's Temple Church, that his father was supposed to have been a actual preacher to that church or minister to one of those churches, may have been where he got some of the information from, or either from his father himself. But because Noble Drew Ali's family, only his aunt is mentioned and not his mother, father, or brothers or sisters are mentioned. We haven't even really had any of his brothers or sisters even come to the forefront to claim fame to him at all. The only one that came to say they were associated to the prophet was the empress that came and said she was a cousin, I think a second cousin, something to that effect, to Prophet Noble Drew Ali. So we don't really have any other than him showing up in 1907 and the organizations that he started. We have to more likely start his group with us when he started the Old Canaanite Temple in 1912. Division rose. Now, what I was told about that, the Old Canaanite Temple, is that it was established in 1913, was that it was a lot of controversy behind the Canaanite Temple. And the actual IRS and those individuals tried to shut the prophet down. Something about him trying to make him go into the military, and they were coming after him. So what was best for him to do was to go ahead and get rid of that whole organization. Get rid of that whole organization at that time. So he get rid of that organization and then go ahead and put something that's more specific to who we are. Now, because again, I was not there, a lot of us was not there. We only have oral events, and some people wrote information down that the prophet went on and decided that the Old Canaanite Temple was not the right fit, because it was only, people would only associate us with the Canaanites, and we were ancient Moabites and Canaanites. So he needed to connect the two. And that was where he got us, from the ancient Moabites to modern day to the Moors. And Ish on Moors means the practice of. So Moorish means we're Moors, and ISH means practice. So that is where he decided to do the more simple of science, and then from the more simple of science to the more Science Temple of America, lawfully incorporated. All right. So now I want to go. So we cleared all of that information up. And like I said, I wrote notes for myself because I wanted to make sure that I was able to clear up some things from the prior week. And so I did make notes for myself. So that's what you see me looking down at is the notes. And I'm going to find a way that a lot of documentation that I have, my son, as we're working on building this platform, a teleprompter go up. So when I'm reading from a document, you all can actually see the documentation that I'm reading from. And I think that he said it'll replace the visual image of me, which is fine because that's not the importance. The importance of information that we'll be able to share with you all. Okay, so from 1929, all right, so now we talk about, and I want to, before I get into any other movements that came across, because we know that the Nation of Islam, even though they try to act like they have no association with the Moorish Science Temple, we know that they know that the Prophet Noble Drew Ali is the reason that they're here. I want to, and I had a sister who got really angry with me because the man they call Wallace Ford Muhammad, the European that they all was following, at one time I had said to her, so y'all replaced a blonde-haired, blue-eyed man for a dark-haired Russian. Y'all just replace one for the other, because there's no man that's European, pale in complexion, going to come here and lead the people. So my big question is, why would a group of melanated people follow a pale form? And you would have to associate that with that European psychology of the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus. So they would rather follow a man in pale complexion, acting like he coming to save you as the savior complex, instead of a dark complected man who will have your better interests at heart. And it doesn't matter to me who get angry with that. What I say is the truth. I would not follow a pale man. And when Wafdi Muhammad, Elisha Muhammad's son, mentioned that and said that he would never follow a pale form, division took place. And they did all kinds of things to him, and we'll talk about that in other segments. But the bottom line is, because he knew the truth. Why would you have to question yourself. And Elisha Muhammad came from the Moorish Science Temple. His name was Elisha Pool Bey. And I have another article where it says it was Paul something, his names. And I will make sure the next segment that I do have his actual names for you posted so you can do your own historical research. The bottom line is that he was in the Moorish Science Temple with Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And when he wanted to start his own organization, the Prophet told him no, he didn't. So when the Prophet passed form, a lot of Moors went to different people. Some followed the reincarnated prophet, some followed Millie Eel, some followed that European Wafdi Muhammad. And Wafdi Muhammad and Elisha Muhammad got together. So when Wafdi supposedly went back to Arabia, is where they claim he was from, and I have documented proof that he was still right there in California. But the bottom line is that he gave the organization over to what's called the Temple of Allah, or Allah's Temple, something to that effect. And he literally turned it over to Elisha Muhammad because he was being ran out of there. And so Elisha Muhammad took that on and started the Nation of Islam. But it was called the Temple of God. It was called the Allah's Temple, Temple of Allah. I have that here in my documents. It was called that. And the brothers wore feathers at that time in the movement. So again, I do not know why our brothers and sisters tried to separate themselves from the Nation of Islam, separate themselves from Moorish science, when you know good and well that your organization only stemmed up from the Moorish Science Temple. And this is why Farrakhan has spoken in the past about Noble Drew Ali. Because even though you want to try to disassociate yourself and act like the Elijah was some great prophet, he was not. He was a messenger because he had a message to give that was told to him, a message to give. He was not some great savior or prophet. Elijah was not. He was a leader, like other historical leaders. He was a leader. And so you have to face the truth of the fact. You know, a lot of times we want to keep, and this is why we have so much division amongst us, because nobody wants to associate themselves with it. The book that he had about the Asiatic black man, before that book said black man on it, was the Asiatic man, and later changed, hyphenated the Asiatic black man. Where do you think he got the Asiatic from? He just woke up with an epiphany? Or Wallace Ford? He has a whole bunch of alias names that we have documentation of. You know, Wallace Ford all of a sudden just gave it to him. Excuse me. We have to realize that, you know, there's a lot of things we don't like historically, but it's true fact, and we have to associate that fact, because I think that when we start connecting the facts together, we'll work more in a group. But I think that the whole identity of being black keeps them separated. Excuse me. Keeps them separated because they don't want to take on a nationality and birthrights. They want to still be black. And we know that everything, and all you got to do, listen, is pick up a dictionary. And everything associated with the word black is something degrading. There's no positivity in the word black, but they do have a commercial now out all over the television, all over the internet. Black is beautiful. They bringing that back. Black is this, to be honored black, to be this is black, to be that is black. And again, it's a lie, because there's no beauty in the word black. Other than it's a beautiful color to wear. I love wearing black, the color black, but I will not be black by status, because there's no such thing. And the thing is that makes you lower status. So as long as I embed in your mind the pride of black, as long as I keep pushing it generationally, the pride of black, as long as I keep pushing that narrative, you'll never want to have the conversation of nationality and birthrights. Why would you, when you're comfortable being black? There's no such people as black people anywhere historically, and that's the truth. I do have some tea here. I'm going to sip my tea. Some of my coughing a little bit, some herbal tea. And so we have to really wake our minds up to this. And this is information. I have to say, this information is educational information, is for research information, is for you to do your own research, to get information for yourselves, to be able to look up what I'm talking about. It is good for you to do that. All right. Again, pencils and paper. So before I go into the Declaration of Human Rights and the Rights of the Child, and we went into all that the prior week, and I trust you all did some research on it. Before I do that, I want to go a little bit more and talking about the whole temple setup in the prophet. So we know that the prophet, before he passed form, he had at least 15 established temples. Some say 19, some say 15. It's a matter of temples. But there were a lot of offshoots. It was a temple called the Faham Temple, which the brother's name is on the tip of my tongue. But anyway, I found out that that group is still in existence today. But they honored Prophet Noble Drew Ali. So in the literature, when they wrote information out, they said, we honor Prophet Noble Drew Ali as our prophet. And they have a small group that's not really historically documented. So I thought that that was information that we should know about. And I do have it here. I may have had it on my computer. Like I said, my research, it is in my book, that they literally are honored. I don't know if they're still honoring Prophet Noble Drew Ali today, but they were honoring him but their leader was another brother, and they were called the Faham. And the Arabic word, it actually means wisdom and understanding. And they used the wings, the same wings you see the Egyptian wings, that a lot of people that say they're Kemetic or they're practicing the uh, Egyptian styles, or they have all of these different groups. There's so many of them, and they have the same wing style as that. And I thought that they should be historically, because it's not for Rome to tell our story; it's for us to tell our story. That they are still in existence. And so I tried to order the book that was written by the actual. So let me pull it up on my computer really quickly. So I have that information, and it is in my book. But I wanted to bring it up, historical information on that, because it's truly, truly wonderful to know that even though they were a branch offshoot, and I believe what probably happened is some kind of division took place in the Moorish Science Temple. And so they decided to, you know what, let's start our own group, because we were, according to historical records, the brother was kicked out of the Moorish Science Temple. And so that's, I wanted to go over that. And let me see if I can bring up my information that I do have on him. I wanted to bring that to the forefront today so you all can do your research, because I tried to order the book that was written, but it's out of stock. And even when you go to their website, the book is still out of print. And so I'm trusting that someone may have that information where I can get it. So let me just pull him up here. I wanted to do that. Again, this is live, so everything I'm doing, everything that we're talking about, everything that we're going through is all live. There is no, this is all live. And the reason I wanted to do it live, and I said, why you want to do it live instead of recording? Because I want it to be authentic. I want it to be live. I want people to be able to see that what I'm talking about is live and be able to join in. And like I said, eventually we will have guests to come on to actually talk, information, and have guests come on. But for right now, it's just me giving information for you to make an informed decision. And if people desire to come on and share their information, then that's fine. They're able to do that. You can come on and share your information with us, on a Prophet Noble Drew more science. Like I said, we cover a lot of different things. We're not just covering, we're going to cover a lot of different things. But my introduction is absolutely about Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Absolutely. So I had to bring this up, and I could probably show to you all the information on where they talked about Prophet Noble Drew Ali. I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm going to have it where when I'm talking to you all, the screen sharing portion of this, I have not actually got down pat how to use it. I can pull up the documents that I'm talking about, and you all will be able to see the information from the actual historical records. But I wanted to go over, let me see this one here. All right. The brother that I'm speaking of is around here. And so I want to do this part because I want, if Morris do have the information about him or anybody from his group, if they're watching, I would like to have the book that he put out, because I'm a historian. So it's the Holy Faham Gospel for Divine Understanding, and his name is Paul Nathaniel Johnson. Paul Nathaniel Johnson is who the author of that book is. So you all should write that down. And again, it's called the Holy Faham, and I looked up to make sure I'm saying the pronunciation correctly in Arabic. Fahamme Gospel, or Divine Understanding. And of course, Faham, if you look up the word in Arabic, I have no reason to lie to you, it means wisdom, understanding. So that is another group that I found out that branched off from the Moorish Science Temple. Now, the Nation of Islam, because it got extremely big, of course, we know that's a branch off of it. But this is another group during my research and investigation when I started writing my book that I found out that this individual started a movement. But what's interesting what he says, the sealing of the prophets, it says a prophet seal simply means approved of God and verified by him. The Most High God puts his stamp on approval or his seal upon all of the prophets and the true believers as well. See Holy Quran, the allies, 33:41. Many prophets have appeared in the world since that time. The Son of Man had the Father sealed. And that would come from John 6:27 and then Revelation 7:3. The last prophet of the God of the Arabs was the holy prophet Muhammad. The last prophet of God or for the Jews was who they called Jesus. And the last prophet the appearing for us is Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And so they literally honored Prophet Noble Drew Ali in this group organization. So even though they were not called themselves Moors, they still honored Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And so when I did the research and looked them up, they're still a group organization today. And they wear fezzes and the women wear turbans on their head. And they teach Asiatic pride. Now, whether they using the terms black or Negro or colored, I'm trusting that they're not. I have no idea yet about that. I'm still doing the research on them. But I did want to share that with you all today, that there's groups out there that may not be calling themselves Moors, but they're still following the divine teachings of our holy divine prophet, and they recognize him, of who they are. Because listen, a lot of people, because there was so much confusion, and this is historically documented about the Moors. We don't have to get on here and try to lie about the Moorish Science Temple. During that time before the New Deal, everybody, a whole lot of people were trying to get from underneath that Negro mentality. So a lot of groups emerged from that time. And the most important thing for us was the prophet didn't just try to emerge us from that time frame. He literally took us back in the mind to identification, because that's what was missing. Out of all of these groups, there's no historical information on any of them except the Moorish Science Temple that established nationality and birthrights. None of these other groups, they all came up more under religious affiliation, more of a religious organization. But when it came to civics, there was nothing being taught about who we were. And so the thing is, we would still be dead right now in the mind if it was not for what the prophet brought. Excuse me. Excuse me, I have a lot of drainage today. Should have took that elderberry. I should have took that elderberry before I came on. So the bottom line is that we know historically, I took you in a timeline from the 1700s. I took you in the 1700s when people started emerging a little bit of consciousness all the way into present day time. At one time, the Moorish Science Temple, they thought was, just becoming a very small group. And so because it was so large in the beginning, because you have to think about it, coming out of slavery, not knowing who you are, someone comes to you and say, listen, I need to tell you about who you are. I need to make sure that you understand that this is not your legacy. This is not your children's legacy. That you are someone, you have a birthright, you have a nationality, you have an actual existence before slavery. And then start waking you up That is a beautiful feeling. Beautiful feeling. But then what happens is everybody wants a piece of the action. And now they want to start, claiming, trying to, claim the prophet, prophethood. They want to start stepping in and not recognizing the prophet. They want to try to take over the organization without real intent. And then all this confusion comes on board. And then people get worried and discouraged. And like, what's going on here? Why is this one stepping in? What's going on here? And so I can imagine in that state of mind at that time, the confusion that the people were in. The prophet told us that we're not nickel, black, and colored. We have a birthright and nationality, but why isn't everyone getting on board with this? Why is there so much confusion in this organization? And with that, then people start breaking off into factions. Well, I like this brother better, so I'm going to go here. Or I like this sister better, so I'm going to go here. Or this is my family, so since my family left, I'm going to leave and go too. And then it's all this confusion. Now you got all these different branches and all this confusion going on. Instead of sticking together as an individual group and making it work, this is the things that we're still fighting today to keep together. Because as Moors, we are the prophets that we're under one fighting victory. We're all one. So it doesn't matter if you call yourself the ancient Moors or you call yourself the 1913 Moors or you call yourself the Aviance Moors or whatever Moor you want to call yourself. It's all one. So this is where we need to make sure that we're sticking together. And I'm putting out a plea with this online that I'm doing, with this live, that more start thinking about that. Everybody wants to be the hierarchy. Everybody wants to be the Steve me. I'm the big one. I'm the one. I got all the information. When we're all given a portion in what measure seemeth good unto ourselves. So we need to take our portions and put them together and be that great organization again. Everybody wants to be the big I and everybody follow under me. It's not about me. It's about the organization getting us back to where we need to be. The Prophet Noble Drew Ali came here and tried to organize us, yet we still fighting in 2026 about who's the leader of this great organization. Who's this and who's that? And a lot of us are lying. A lot of people are lying about who they are and what credentials that they have. And listen, credentials don't have to come from the European man because you went to, a school for being a preacher, right? You went to school and you got your theology degree, right? You got it. And so now you think that if you come to the more science simple, you should be able to come right in and be hierarchy because you got this degree. You got that degree in Christianity, not in Islam. It did not put you in a position to teach Islamic studies. It did not put you in a position to tell the history and legacy. And I believe truly in what El Malik El Shabazz said. Before you join any organization, you should know about the organization. That means the historical content of the information of it, who the leader is, who started it, the purpose and reason for that organization. So when someone asks you why you are part of this organization, you can truly tell them why you are a part of the organization. But you have to do your own investigative research. Not try to come into an organization think that it's going to save you from a lot of your past traumas that you had. When you came to this organization, you had past traumas. Those traumas just do not go away. There is a lawful and divine way to do everything. And this is what the Prophet Noble Drew Ali tried to establish. So for those who dishonor his name, for those who dishonor what he bought and try to act like you know better, take yourself back in the mind to the time frame he was in 1920s. Now be mindful, tracing back to 1907, all the way up to the time that he wind up passing for him in 1929. His battle was trying to unite his people from under the Roman yoke and law and establish us back on a higher foundation, giving us back our nationality and birthrights. Who could ask for more than that? You tell me a group or organization today in 2026 that is doing that even today. The only way you can be reestablished back to the families of nations is through your own organization. No organization can establish you back. This not from your own. What could they be establishing you to? So this is food for thought. And this is for everyone. Whether you practice Moorish science or not, you should know the history of the Moors. You should know who we are, our legacy, and to know about the man who came here to bring you back your divine rights. I see a few comments in here. Move on movement as one. I see a few people saying a few things here. All right. But I appreciate everyone who's coming in or joined in to the call. And so for me, this is that people are truly interested in what we're talking about, which is the Prophet Noble Drew AliTonight, the Moorish Science Temple of America, how everything got started, how it began until today, because there's no ending to the truth, right? This organization will be long past me, long past us. And so I do want to continue on with, now I want to get into the whole purpose of this organization was for the uplifting of fallen humanity. And so that's very important, knowing that humanity is very, very important. So when the prophet was talking about humanity, he was talking about woman. That humanity fell to the lowest depths, right? He was talking about woman. But in humanity, with you're talking about woman, comes man and comes our children, right? And I want to say children too, but I want to stop for one moment and pause to go over that word, because when I see information on the websites, or I hear people talking about our children or our legacy, and they use the word kid, I have to get into this right now today. So our children are not kids. And I challenge you to pick up any historical record or any lawful document when it's talking about children and see the word kid. There is not, because it's another slang term like Negro or black that was put on us. Kid is an animal. It's a goat. And it's not just a baby goat. It's a child. Well, I don't even like to use the word kid, but it's the offspring of animals. So we do not have animals as offspring. We have humans, and we have the hue to prove it. Humanity. We have the hue. This is our hue. So we're human. Whether you want to be or not, you are human. And so your children should not be called kids. And then when they act like these beastly acts, then you wonder why you're throwing on those words to them. We know that words carry spirit and life with them. And so you're putting that on your children. So stop putting that word kid on your children. It's not just a baby goat. It's actually a offspring of all animals could be called kids. Of all animals. You can call any animal, you can call any animal that has offspring a kid, even though it's more associated with goats. It is that. And so we have to make sure that we're not doing that to our children. They are children. And again, now you have people who claim to be scholars and historians, and they be talking about kids all day long. Just hound out the word kid. How are you an intellectual and calling our children those derogatory words or names? So I wanted to go into that when I say it. So I'm talking about the Declaration of the Rights of the Child and Children and the restoration of our nationality and birthrights. So in an era where there was so much confusion coming out of slavery, a lot of confusion coming out of slavery about who we were, trying to identify ourselves with who we were, it was a lot of confusion. And so some of the confusion was taken away from us when Prophet Noble Drew Ali decided to tell us who we were. So it's no confusion that he used to stand on a corner passing out little flyers and telling people to come to the Moorish Science Temple and find out who you are. It's called street prophets. A lot of prophets start that way. A lot of people start that way. They're on the street and they're passing out the information. Do you think that he just sat inside the building and got on a loudspeaker and just called out? He had to get out there, take it to the streets, and bring the people in. And if you ever watch the movie Malcolm X, they call it Malcolm X. We know his name is El-Malik El-Shabazz, dishonoring him, calling him that. But they show an episode in there where the brothers were on the street talking and speaking and passing out information and telling them to come down to the temple. This is the same thing that the prophet had did. So why do we want to fight each other about, oh, the prophet never stood on the street corners? Yes, he did. He stood on the street corners and passed out flyers and told people to come on in, come down to the temple, and gave them the hours that they were supposed to come. So let's just make sure we clarify that. So he did. So he wanted to talk about nationality and birthrights. And this would take us into national and international law. At that time, who was talking about national and international law? I'll pause for a moment. No one. No one in any of the groups, from the Israelite churches to the Zion Baptist Church, which actually came after the prophet, the actual real established one that came after the prophet, was not teaching about nationality and birthright. They were more on a religious organization, not a civic organization. So the prophet said, this is what he'll do. He'll go ahead and he'll make it a religious and civic organization. Ingenious. Because that way the people get the historical side of their birthright, and they'll also get the religious side of their birthright. So since people were largely religious, this is what he did. He decided, you know what? Let me give them both. This way, no one's hungry seeking out for information anywhere else. We got the religion we can teach them about. We'll teach them about the civic side of organization. Now we have the Moorish Science Temple of America, divine and national movement, which means the divine side is the spiritual side and the national side of the organization is the civic side. Ingenious. That's what our prophet was, ingenious. All right. And so in that nationality portion that he did, gives us a few things that protect us under that organization. So but basically, a lot of us did not understand the national organization and may have taken another, generation to understand truly what the prophet was talking about. And then some did not agree with him with teaching the national side of the organization. They just wanted the religious component. And so this is where the splits took off, because they didn't think nationality was important, when nationality is certainly the key. Nationality is what we should all be striving to find out about. Who are we? What is your nationality? What is your birthright? And I love the portion where if you are a family from my generation or prior generations, and maybe even today, if you all have a birth certificate, which we should not have those certificates now today that we know better, but if you have a birth certificate, pull out birth certificates from your family members. And on each birth certificate, look at what it says race. Some, and I've done this experiment, race, some will say African American, some will say black, some will say colored, some will say Negro, depending on your time frame you were in. So now you're one individual, right? All the same hue, all from the same birth mother. Don't have to be from the same birth father. Mother's maternal. All from the same birth mother. How do you have different specifications of what your race is? So if you all one people, truth do not change. How do you be all these different things and coming from the same vessel? How is that? Again, things that make you think. So you know that there has to be something wrong with that. Not challenge anyone that's watching this broadcast, or if you see it afterwards, to do that experiment from family members. Ask them to all put together, for those who have birth certificates, to do that. Now we know that as we went on later, we knew that the Bureau of Biostatistics was not for us. So we had it was information that was given, and Timothy Dingle and his brother Richardson both opened up the Moorish Bureau of Vital Statistics, and we'll talk about that later on in the programs. And so now we should be having our birth certificates through the Moorish nation. We should not be going through their entities getting birth certificates. But that's another conversation. But this is where nationality comes into play. So we're going to go first with, I want to go first with the Declaration of the Rights of the Child. I want to do that. And we know that Article 3 says that every child is entitled from birth to a name and a nationality. Every child is. And then the Convention of the Rights of the Child, Article 7, they upped it. They upped it and said that the child shall be entitled from birth to a name and a nationality, and then the child should have the right from birth to a name and nationality and acquire a nationality. So listen to the word acquire. So if you were not born with your national status, with the wonderful work the Prophet did, you can acquire your national status, and that is what we do. The Moorish nation, Moorish Zion Temple of America here, we acquire your nationality for you, so you can do that. So now you can acquire your nationality according to Article 7. Because in Article 3, it told us that we had the right to it. But because we know some of us were born and our rights were taken away, it established your rights back on Article 7. It says you have a right to acquire a nationality. Look up the word acquire. All right. All right. So now let's go further. The international recognition. Okay. So the international rights of the child. So now under the framework international. So we have the U.S. Declaration of Human Rights, Article 15, that states everyone has the right to a nationality. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his or her nationality. That is what it says on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And these are all documents that we use here at the nation, and we've been using them for years, and you can pull them out and use them too. But let us just go further to that. So this also goes under the Religious Freedom Act. In the Religious Freedom Act, it talks about, under Religious Freedom Act, that everyone has the right to what? Religious freedom. This protects your freedom of belief, your freedom of worship, your freedom of identity. This is what that protects. So when you all are so afraid of stating who you are as far as your religion goes, being Islamic, why are you afraid? You're protected. But we're afraid because we do not know our rights, because we do not associate even these things with being human. Because remember, even with the Declaration of Independence, it was not really written for us, because at the time that they kept us in our own land and just captured us in our own land, in our own land. This, I have to keep saying it over and over again, in our own land. Right? When that happened to us in our own land, we felt like we had no rights. All right. So I wanted to go over that. And this is the international law. This is things that you can find in international law. So it's not something, like I said, everything I'm saying today is information that you can acquire on your own. If you have a pencil and paper and write down the information that I'm talking about, you're able to do that. It's really important that we need to know all this information. And you have to ask yourself, well, Prophet Noble Drew Ali went to all the trouble to do this. And so I want to talk about now the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. I do want to cover that because there's a lot of controversy about that. That book was written by Levi, and Levi stole it from somewhere else, and it's not come from any historical documentation and all that, which is not true. So we know that just like the Piscean record that they call the Holy Bible, was a bunch of books that were taken away, a bunch of books that they took portions of. And we know historically that the King James Version is the most popular version because King James wanted the Pope at that time to include him in. He wanted to be in with the Pope, and he wanted to be able to run things, and the Pope absolutely no. So his anger with the Pope, he got some people, they call them scholars. I'm not going to give them that much honor as scholars, but I was not there. That he got them together and they took transcripts of ancient texts and put them together and created the King James Version of the Bible. Now, when you look at the King James Version of the Bible, the historical events are twisted. Books are in reverse, information is twisted, and there's nothing holy about the book. I don't care what no one says, blasphemous, blasphemy, whatever. It's not a holy book. It's a book of historical events that people wrote down as they, like we're doing today. And my thing is that the book of the Bible should still be being written today because it did not stop. Life did not stop during that time. So we have to make sure that because at that particular time, that we have to make sure that we're looking at what took place during that time. And so to keep us informed about what took place, these individuals, which, they call them scribes, or like I said, I don't even give them that. I'm not sure what they were during that time, but I'll use the honor as scribes or whatever. The bottom line is that they created a King James version of the Bible for him. That was for him. And so a lot of people swear by that. But if you look in that book, it's a bunch of historical events. Even if you look into a lot of the Egyptian texts or ancient books, I have a whole library of books over there I study from. The story about Esau is the same historical information that they from Egyptian scrolls and texts. And I don't even like to use the word Egyptian because that's another modern term for us. But the bottom line is that again is information that they took and put it together to control the people. So, and then we don't really know historically, we were not there because even when they talk about foot, it's a very short portion in the Bible that talks about foot. And Foot is the father of so-called father of the Moors. That's who that is. And if you my book information about the Moors booklet, you'll see that I have all the information in there about Foot and how we relate to Foot, etc. That's another topic of conversation. But some of this actually falls into conversation that it was. But anyway, so the bottom line is, so that book of so we're talking about the Circle 7, the Book of the Seven Seals, and I was going on to say that book, just like the Holy Quran, the Universal Quran, was put together also for the Prophet. Now, for the Prophet Muhammad, he does state that he got together scribes, and that is how that the Holy Quran was written, and about amount of time it was written, and all of that. And we'll get into more of that for those who are interested in all of the information. I have so much information. The bottom line is the Circle 7, Book of the Seven Seals. If you look at that versus the Aquarian Gospel, there are some big differences in it. But in the Aquarian Gospel, it talks about a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus. We know that he was not have blonde-haired, blue-eyed. Well, he was talking about the Nicene Council's Jesus. So that would be correct for them, that the blonde-haired, blue-eyed man they talk about, because that's from the Nicene Council, the Jesus they try to indoctrinate us with. But we know that if you have to have Jesus, he would look like us, because even in that Piscean record that they put together, it talks about the way that he looked, the man they called Jesus. He had eyes inflamed. Hair was like Brillo, wool, right? His hair was like wool. Feet like burned in the fire. All right, so who did that look like? What European you see that look like that? It doesn't. So from the description that they give, even in that Piscean record, you can tell that the man that they're describing is us. So in that Aquarian gospel is talking about the Nicene Council, Jesus. And the circle 7, the prophet is talking about Jesus, the real man they called Jesus, which really his name was not Jesus. His name was Isa. And actually it was Emmanuel, but we say Isa, Emmanuel, we know he was not Jesus. And this is a true fact of the matter. And I talked about this prior. When you're given an appellation or a name, if you decide to change it, like Isa decided to change his name to Yeshua, you have the right to do that. But no matter what name you had prior to name you have modern, if someone calls you by that name and you choose to answer it, you will answer either your modern correction of your appellation or name or the old one, because some people may not have taken on that you have corrected your status. I have to keep repeating this over and over again. You will still answer to the name, because you may, will say, well, I'm not sure who this is, but let me just answer and then say to them, this is now my name. This is who I go by, to help them identify who you are. Because some people may not know, who you are now, or change your name to, or corrected your status to. So you have to correct them. But if someone calls you by a name that is unfamiliar to you, would you answer it? And because his name was never Jesus, why would someone you call, please help me, I'm feeling sick, I'm doing whatever, why would you get a reply? Because that doesn't identify with the individual that you're calling on. Now be mindful, this is historical information. You could pull it up on your television screen, you could type it into the computer. There's a lot of ministers or preachers or whoever that say, we know his name was not Jesus. We know that there was no J. They'll go on and explain, but we call him Jesus because. Now, this man had passed on over 200 years or more ago. And now you want to call him a name that you chose. And he's supposed to answer when he had no affiliation with the name whatsoever. You have to think about that. Then you call him God, when he tells you, even in the Piscean record, that he is not God. In that record, you want to make him God. And so then when they show a lot of historical movies, or they say that when he looked up, or even in the Piscean record, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Is he talking to himself? Or is he talking to a higher source than himself? And then you have to look at the interpretation, because we know that Allah or God is not a masculine energy, it's a feminine energy. Ilaha, all of those are feminine. In the translation, could he be talking to a man or a woman? So it's a lot of holes in that information that needs to be examined. And I'm only telling you this for historical information, telling you to do the research on your own so you can check and do the research for yourself. But that's why I'm sharing this information, because it's time for us to stop being told false information and acting like it's okay if we sit on this information or pass this information on to others. And because the prophet came here to wake us up and put us back into the mind frame of not only the national side of the organization, but the religious side. If I desire to do the religious portion of the organization, it's my right to do so under the international rights to religious freedom. I want the truth. And since I was not there at that time, I had to use historical records and events to find the information. The same that the Prophet Noble Drew AliTonight did with the Circle 7 Quran. So what he took was information that he thought was good for us to know and didn't give us a great big book. And I was told that the prophet said he didn't put in a great big book because we would never read it. So he put in a small pamphlet size where the information was right there and available for us and gave us the information that we needed. And then he also said, for those who love Jesus, because we were still Jesus minded. Now, that means that when you look into that information, if you know better, then you know that he gave us that information at that time to bring us in and to keep us grounded. But now when we know that that was not his name, Jesus, then we should be correcting that. We should not continue to push on and push on and push on and push on that information if it was not correct. We should correct the information so the generations after us will not be confused and understand. Now, what I love is one of my students, we had the Thursday prior, we do community day every last Thursday of the month in our online schooling for Moorish children. And when we were reading about Prophet Noble Drew Ali, because every last Thursday of the month, every year, we do an honor dinner, honor to the prophet, and we cook a big meal. I talked about this the meeting prior. But one of the young brothers, when he was reading the information and the word Jesus came up, he broke it down to the audience and explained that that was the so-called name, but we know that his name is. It made me feel good and honored that in our school, and Brother Noble Manuel Bay is his instructor, that in the class when he was teaching them theology in the year prior to this year, that he told them that and broke it down to them. So I was so elated that this young brother knows the truth already. And this is generationally. We have to get our children in the mind frame of the truth right now generationally. And that's what the school is all about. But I want to move forward to the information. So we know that the prophet put together the book of the seven seals. And so in the book of the seven seals, it simply talks to us about the information. It talks to us about lessons. It talks to us about understanding. It even takes us into some of the old texts. But I love one of the stories I love most in that circle 7 is Elijah's lessons, the unity of light. And what I love about that, because it makes life so real, it says, Elihu in the second grove met unto his people and said, no living thing is bound by cords. Let me go back to Elihu, lessons of unity of life. The word again Elihu sat in the sacred grove. And the word again. So that means that Elihu had to teach the same lesson again and again and again, the word again. So Elihu said, and again, he had to teach and again and again. So Elihu had to teach us, so we have to take that again. We have to teach this again and again and again and again and again. We have to keep teaching these lessons again and again. And if we have to keep starting with who Prophet Noble Drew Ali is, then that's where we need to start. We need to understand who he was. We need to understand that, yes, before he got the call, he was a man, just like any other man. Excuse me. I do apologize for the drainage today. I trust next week it'll be better. But I want to say that we have to, just like the prophet, we have to constantly and continuously teach our people again and again and again. And for me, if I have to come on here constantly, and people may get bored with it, I don't want to hear that or whatever, and that's fine. Do not tune in. But to constantly remind us of the man, of who he is, the work that he did for us, that is something that we have to cherish and move forward, because the prophet told us when you know better, you do better. So when we know things are better, when we get more information or updated information, then we have to make sure that we're teaching the updated information. If I make a mistake, like I apologize for the week prior when I spoke to several people and I said, I made the error of saying before Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and I did not realize I said that. And so when I come on the following week, I have to make sure I correct and say that these people came after Prophet Noble Drew Ali. I was speaking about people that came after the 1700s, not prior to the 1700s, that I needed to correct that. And that's what we should do. So when we know that the information that we may have given about something that's incorrect, we need to correct it. We should not be so puffed up in our own conceit that we don't fix something. Because if you put something out there and it's not corrected, it will take on a life of its own. And so I wanted people to know some about Prophet Noble Drew Ali before he became our prophet. He was a man. He was a child before he became our prophet. He grew up. And, listen, if he was born in 1886 and he came here in 1907, you do the math. How old was he when he came here? And according to historical records, he did not come here by himself. Now, we know about the abusive aunt that, the story was told to us. And very young in the movement, I was told about that story, about the abusive aunt who threw him in a burning flame of fire. And he crawled out of the fire. And when he crawled out of the fire, so according to the records, his house, she put the house on fire. I believe it was the house on fire. And Noble Drew Ali crawled out of the fire, and he still had, and you could see on his face and hands where he had burns. So was I there? No. Historically, they say that's what took place. But they never really mentioned his mother and father in that particular story. But as I did further research, I found research where his parents were present in his life. So that tells me that sometimes when we're given accounts of information, we don't give all of them accounts. So could we put all of it together and say that his mother, father was here because his aunt was certainly here? So his mother and father was here. His aunt certainly was here. And his parents were a part of his life. But when he left home as a young, they say he was a seaman. He was a porter. All these different occupations that he may have had. I think about the movie again, Malcolm X. When they show El Malik on the train, he was a porter, right? He was selling food and things like that and talking to them on that. So historically, some of the context could have come from that information. It could be true. The bottom line is that I do not discard any records that come through my way because I want to know the information about the man that I honor. I serve my God and I honor my prophet because I'm going to tell you, if it was not for Prophet Noble Drew Ali personally, I would not be here today. I would not be able to talk to you. I would not have been able to meet some of the individuals that I have met. I would not have a school right now that's online. I wouldn't have any of these things. I wouldn't be able to wrap my head so beautifully and adorn myself gracefully as an empress that I am. I would not be able to do those things if it wasn't for the teachings of this divine man who took the time. And listen, he did not have to do that. Prophet Noble Drew Ali could have just went on his way and did anything else. So we have to look at, he had to have some divine call to say, I am going to do this for my people. And he did it. So that's what I look at, because any other individual, he could have just walked off. He could have said, I don't want to be a part of this. He could have done all of that, but instead he chose to take the time to teach us about ourselves. And that is the admiration that I have for him. So now, and the information he gave was accurate information. We can look it up and trace ourselves. But I have to share this. So Bricat, it's a Britannica Encyclopedia. Am I saying it right? Britannica Encyclopedia. When you type in Moorish in that encyclopedia online, I had fun with this one day. I was in a study group and I was telling them about this information as well. And so when you type it in, it'll tell you that Moorish does not exist, that it's made up. That goes to show you the people that put the information in there want you to be erased or eliminated. Now, historically, in all kinds of books, the Moors in Spain, the book Tibetan records, the book from Timbuktu, all kinds of books. You'll find us in there. The Moors. Moorish, you might spell Maur or Muar, different spellings. You may find it. But the bottom line is we're there in the records. But in that encyclopedia, if you type that in and try to look up Moors, it'll tell you they were not a real people. Or then most books tell you that the Berbers, who are considered Moors, were pale in complexion. That that has no association with us. So everyone wants to steal our identity and give us no starting point except slavery. So boop, all of a sudden these people popped up, and they're entrapped in their own land, and they just popped up, and here they go, and they have no legacy. And that is so untrue. And so when Prophet Noble Drew broke it down, he gave us a roadmap to follow, to find ourselves and be able to teach this information to our brothers and sisters. It is really important. Let's see, I have yes, Islam, others in the Prophet Noble Drew. Thank you for teaching. All right, Islam, shukran. And so I will have someone who will be able to read you all messages when they come across and things like that. But I will stop every minute to look at one and try to let you all know, acknowledge you all that you are there. And I really appreciate the support that you all are coming on and supporting this broadcast. But this broadcast is for you, it's for me. And I was telling my son earlier at break fast, I know some of you call it breakfast, but it's breaking fast. I like to enunciate exactly what it is. If they break fast, you fasted all through the night and you're coming into break, and it's called break fast. But the bottom line is that my son and I was having break fast today in between our breaks with the online schooling. He's not teaching on Thursdays. So, we were able to sit down for a few minutes, and my little time trying to scoop that food in 15 minutes. We were talking about information and how information gathering and how it's so important that when you get the information that you need to put it out there for the people, because people are not taking the time to put it out there. And so it gets all twisted up and then it gets lost. And then the generation that's coming forward have no information. I cannot tell you how many young people I've talked to who have no idea who Prophet Noble Drew is. I heard about him, but they'll talk about the people that they're underneath. They'll talk about the people that they listen to on YouTube, and I call it YouTube University, where they listen to on YouTube and all these other platforms, but they do not know who Prophet Noble Drew is. And so I feel it is my absolute pleasure to get on here and talk about who Prophet Noble Drew is. And it's so important because in order to understand the work that this man did for us, we have to understand what he went through. And a lot of people say, oh, I didn't know that I didn't know he was here in 1907. Where did you think he just popped up in 1912 and that was it? Did he not have a life before he started teaching us about ourselves? So yes, so we can try to identify as much of that as possible. But in order for us to know our future, we must know our past. We must know about our leader. So when our leader comes up and there's information that people are posing to us, that we can say, oh, I already knew about that. Or thank you for that information. Or me, when someone says something, I write it down. And then I go, look it up, because we are researchers. On Real Morse Talk, that's what we want to do. We want to have Real Morse talking about the information about our prophet. And then, yes, we'll get into other subjects about more science. We'll get into other subjects about his story around ourselves. We'll get into subjects about modern day information and where Moors are today. And look, we'll have guests who desire to come on this platform and join us, because I'm sure I'm not the only one who has historical information about Prophet Noble Drew Ali. But this is not a platform for debate. It's not a platform of who is higher. It's not a platform of hierarchy. It's none of those things. It's a platform of information that we're exchanging with one another, because we need this historical information about who we are so we can move forward into our future. It is so important that we do that. I spoke about our school earlier, and so I do want to bring this back up to show that Real Morse Talk, our email is realmorsetalk@yahoo.com. You can put information in there, post ideals, information that you may have that you want to share amongst us. And then again, we can, bring you on to the platform too. It's not about me. It's about the legacy. It's about the myth. It's about the man, Prophet Noble Drew Ali. We do have organizations. We have our Daughters of Drew Ali, which is our humanitarian organization. And we do take donations. And from there, for those who were contributing to Taj, to the Daughters of Drew Ali, that is the organization that we have amongst the sisters that we literally use that fiat for Taj's healthcare. And still, Taj has to have ongoing herbs and ongoing medical care and things like that. So the other groups that have information that you're donating to, we have no access to those groups, but we do have access to the Daughters of Drew Ali. I just want to be very transparent about that. We also sell books at circle7publishing.com. And thank you for all those who purchased books the week prior. I want to thank you for that, because listen, it takes a lot to build this organization. We know this platform is not free. Information is free, but it takes research for people to get the information. We all have to eat and sustain ourselves. So yes. Also, support our online schooling for Moorish children. You can donate to the $ online schooling for Moorish children MC. We take donations from $1 and up. It doesn't matter. Donations are important to keep us moving and going. For those who are not familiar with our organization, we do have our own online schooling platform. Our levels start from level 0 to considered grade 12, but ours start from level 0 and we go to 3D. And we'll explain that we go by those levels. We do not go so much by grades, but in the public school world, that would be pre-kindergarten grade, pre-kindergarten grade, I apologize for the phone ringing. Pre-kindergarten grade, that's pre-kindergarten grade, all the way up to grade 12. So that's where that would fall into place at that particular time. All right. And so that is what we do have, and we do take donations. You can go to donate at Online Schooling MC, and donate there. You can also go to circle7publishing.com and purchase books there. And you can also go to the $ Daughters of Drew Ali. Last week I said hashtag, but it's $ Daughters of Drew Ali, and donate there too as well. And I do want to say you could also pre-order. Next week I'll have the link to pre-order the book, the information about Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the books that I am putting together and writing for Prophet Noble Drew Ali. You can also pre-order that booklet as well. So I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to come today to share in this experience of conversation about Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the Moorish Science Temple. And as you can see, I have so much paper. I had to go through it, so much information that I have, so much research gathering. But I've been in this for years. I'm very fortunate that my family brought us up at Moorish Science. I'm very, very fortunate that happened for me. It hasn't happened for everyone, but I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful. I give much honor to my grandparents, my grandmother Julia, Pearl, and her husband, that they literally made sure that they raised their children in Moorish Science. That gave me the opportunity to be raised in Moorish Science, to raise my children in Moorish Science, and to raise my grandchildren into Moorish Science. All right. It's just gave me the great opportunity to be able to do that, my legacy. And I just want to let you all know that I appreciate each and every one of you for taking the time to come out today. We have to take care of ourselves, and taking care of ourselves, we can take care of each other. Don't forget that we're here every Thursday on Roll More Salt from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're enjoying what we're doing here, go ahead and like it and subscribe to us here at Real Morse Talk. Again, I am your hostess, Prime Minister National Grand Sheikh Zaria Bay, right here from the Morse National Headquarters. Our location is 4223 Goodson Court in Belcamp, Maryland. I look forward to seeing you all again next week. Until then, be safe, be peaceful. Assalamu alaikum, Moors.